The Great Molasses Flood is one of the strangest and most tragic industrial disasters in U.S. history, occurring on January 15, 1919, in Boston's North End. Known locally as the Boston Molassacre, the incident took place when a large storage tank owned by the Purity Distilling Company exploded, releasing 2.3 million gallons of molasses into the streets. This massive wave of sticky syrup traveled at an astonishing 35 miles per hour and reached a height of 25 feet, sweeping through city blocks, destroying buildings, and tragically killing 21 people while injuring about 150 others. Molasses was a vital commodity in the early 20th century, especially during World War I, as it could be distilled into industrial alcohol used in the production of munitions and other wartime supplies. Purity Distilling Company, a subsidiary of the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, owned the massive tank that stored molasses. Located strategically near Boston's waterfront, the tank could be filled with molasses shipped in from the Caribbean, which was then stored for later distillation. The location also allowed for easy access to railroads, ensuring efficient distribution. Constructed in 1915, the tank was enormous, holding millions of gallons of molasses and towering over nearby buildings at 50 feet high and 90 feet in diameter. However, the tank was poorly designed and hastily built to meet wartime demands. The company did not hire engineers or conduct safety tests, which later investigations revealed would have highlighted serious design flaws. After construction, the tank leaked constantly, with molasses dripping down its sides. Rather than address the structural problems, the company painted the tank brown to disguise the leaks, leaving a sign of the structure's instability ignored. Children were often seen collecting molasses from the leaking tank. The disaster unfolds. On January 15, 1919, Boston experienced a sharp temperature rise from near freezing to about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which likely caused the molasses to expand and build pressure inside the tank. Around 12:30 p.m., a deep rumble echoed through the neighborhood as the tank burst, releasing the molasses with explosive force. Witnesses described the sound as a deep growling, followed by metallic clangs as the rivets popped off, and then a sudden, massive wave of molasses surged through the streets. The sticky wave demolished buildings, crushed structures, overturned wagons, and even knocked over a local fire station. People, animals, and debris were trapped in the viscous liquid as it rapidly spread. Rescuers struggled to navigate the flooded streets, as the sticky substance made every movement difficult. Many were immobilized and suffocated by the dense molasses before help could reach them. Rescue efforts and cleanup. Firefighters, police, and volunteers immediately responded to the disaster, but the molasses made rescue operations incredibly challenging. The sticky substance clung to everything it touched, and with winter temperatures dropping again, the molasses thickened, trapping people, animals, and objects alike. Victims were often found immobilized, and rescuers had to wade through thick molasses to reach them. The cleanup effort was extensive and took months, requiring help from crews outside the city. Saltwater from Boston Harbor and sand were used to break down and absorb the molasses, but the smell of molasses lingered in the area for years afterward. The molasses seeped into the cracks of buildings, streets, and homes, and locals tracked it throughout the city. Reports suggest the North End smelled faintly of molasses on hot days even decades after the disaster. Investigation and legal consequences. In the wake of the flood, investigators examined the tank's construction and found serious structural flaws, including steel walls that were too thin to contain such a massive quantity of molasses. They also found that the company had ignored clear signs of danger, focusing instead on profitability. During the subsequent legal proceedings, evidence surfaced that USIA executives knew about the tank's weaknesses but chose to take no action. The class action lawsuit brought against USIA was groundbreaking, lasting nearly 6 years before the court ruled in favor of the plaintiffs. The victims and families affected by the disaster were awarded $1 million in damages, equivalent to about $15 million today, marking one of the earliest instances of a corporate entity being held legally liable for negligence. The case set a new precedent for corporate responsibility and safety regulations, ultimately leading to stricter industrial standards nationwide. Cultural legacy and lessons. The Great Molasses Flood remains a peculiar and tragic moment in Boston's history, often retold in popular culture as a tale of industrial failure and human folly. Locally referred to as the Boston Molassacre, the disaster illustrates the risks of unregulated industrial practices and highlights the importance of construction safety and corporate accountability. Its unusual nature, molasses being generally associated with slow flow and harmless consumption, made the event even more shocking to the public, challenging assumptions about industrial substances and their potential dangers. In modern times, the Great Molasses Flood is remembered as a curious, almost darkly humorous piece of history. But it also served as a catalyst for significant advancements in public safety, industrial regulation, and legal accountability for corporations. This strange disaster is a reminder that even seemingly benign substances can pose great risks when handled irresponsibly, underscoring the need for rigorous safety standards that protect public welfare.